Are You Nuts? A Tom and Scott Mystery, Book 7. Author Mark Richard Zubro. St. Martin's Press, New York. Eric Aust, narrator. Chapter 5. It was 8 in the morning, and only a few teachers, custodians, and administrators were around. I walked over to Carolyn Blackburn's office. Her personal secretary, Mavis Lakachevsky, announced me immediately. Carolyn said, "It's awful about Meg. I was at the police station. How is she?" "I couldn't get in to see her. My lawyer is working on getting her out on bail. I was too busy calming down raving board members and hysterical parents last night to get a clear idea of what happened. The police wouldn't tell me anything." I gave her a brief outline based on what Agnes had told us. Carolyn shook her head. "I don't picture Meg killing anybody. Why would she need to? What's the point? I know Meg didn't like Belutha. It seems Jerome was in Belutha's and Lydia Marquez's camp. That's news to me. Were you aware of any connection between those three?" "I hear much less than people imagine. As superintendent, I avoid gossip. Most of the time it is inaccurate, or worse, outright vicious lies. Sometimes it is better not to know. What you can't ignore as superintendent can be fairly important. I can picture Meg doing in Belutha." She smiled briefly. "That actually might be amusing. I've seen them at meetings. Belutha tries to come across as sweetness and light, but there's a lot of anger there as well, which everyone finally saw last night. I'm going to be talking to a lot of people about the murder. I have to prove Meg innocent or find the one who did it. If I can help, let me know. Some of the folks who were at the meeting will be eager to talk to you." "I understand that. I know I can't make them open up. The police could get annoyed if they think you're interfering." "I can handle that. Have you got time to tell me what happened last night?" "Definitely. Do you know the outgoing president of the PTA, Lewis Johnson?" I shook my head. "Well, at the beginning, he ran the meeting. He didn't seem to know what he was doing, and things got out of hand very quickly. It was supposed to be a candidate's forum. Questions were to be submitted from the audience, and each candidate would answer them. First, they couldn't agree on who was going to screen the questions." "Why did they need the questions screened?" "Lydia Marquez suggested it. She made them do it the same way at the school board's candidates' night 6 months ago." "Lydia was there last night?" "In her glory." "What'd she say?" Let me tell you this chronologically." I nodded. "They finally wrote my secretary into screening the questions. She was very hesitant at first, but it turned out not to make much difference. To begin, each candidate was supposed to make an opening statement. Amelia Gregory, the other candidate for president, spoke first. She began a perfectly sensible speech about assuring cooperation between teachers, administrators, and parents. Before she could finish, Lydia stood up and began asking her a question about prayer in schools. "This is a PTA issue?" "It is to Lydia." Amelia looked confused. She tried to catch Lewis's attention, but he ignored her. Mavis wasn't about to leap up and throttle Lydia. Several people in the audience shouted out demands that Amelia answer the question. Then several others began booing when they made those demands. Nobody tried to keep order? Carolyn told me that she'd finally taken control of the meeting when she threatened to cancel the entire election. People began to get more reasonable. The plan was that when everyone was done speaking and both factions had been heard from, the candidates would still answer questions from the audience. Carolyn said, "It was like holding a meeting in a simmering cauldron, waiting for it to boil. You were attacked once by name. Sometimes they use those phrases, 'save the children' or endorsing a lifestyle, but you weren't the real focus of the attacks or defenses. There were proposals for censorship and ending tenure. Prayer, I mentioned. One of the more difficult arguments for me to follow was the one demanding the PTA take a stand on abortion. It seemed like dozens of goofy proposals got made." "What started the next fight was a person from Belutha's faction who sounded as if he was calling for a member of the Ku Klux Klan to be elected." As he spoke, I felt a prickle creep up my spine. Maybe he was one of those insane militia people. He didn't have much to say about the PTA election. He was more making a speech about his cause. He did everything but praise Hitler's Germany and call for the opening of concentration camps. I tried to cut him off, but he got abusive. Who was it? Born Quigley. He teaches a few classes part-time in the industrial arts department. He didn't seem to be intimidated by my presence. He's obviously not worried about keeping his job. Meg had already made a statement, but after Quigley spoke, Meg elbowed her way to the speaker's podium. She barely controlled her fury as she spoke against everything he just said. She was nasty and vicious, but witty and clever as well. She was doing fine until she attacked Belutha by name. I don't think she should have done that. It caused a huge uproar. Agnes told me how Belutha charged Meg. I'm not sure Meg was all that innocent. However, I think even Belutha's most rabid supporters were appalled by Quigley. Meg dared Belutha or Lydia to refute what he'd said. Meg was practically challenging Belutha to start something. People have to take a stand at some point. Meg did that in spades. After I managed to reassert control, Jerome Blenkinsop, who had not said a word all night, stood up and defended Belutha and attacked Meg. I could see Meg was a little startled with an attack from that quarter. I called a halt to that. Some employees still worried that a superintendent might get angry. Eventually, the two of them went off to some corner. Agnes said the fight continued. I was afraid of that. Do you remember who left the room after Belutha was helped out? No. People were in and out and moving around throughout the meeting. Each side was trying to line up speakers. A few were making notes as others talked. Some huddled together in the corners of the gym, preparing their next statement. At the end, everyone was sort of milling around as the voting took place, and as we waited for the results to be announced, it would be nearly impossible to tell who was where and when. I certainly don't remember Jerome walking out. Did you see Meg leave? No. Who escorted Belutha out? Carolyn thought several minutes. I'm not sure. I was trying to get everyone else to settle down again. Sorry, that's all I remember. As I got up to go, she said, Last night, you were defended vigorously. You have a lot of good friends and supporters in the community. I'm glad I wasn't the only topic of discussion. Belutha might have had a prepared diatribe against you, but she was escorted out before she could deliver it. As far as I'm concerned, you're a teacher in this district as long as you want to be. Thanks. I appreciate that. Right now, I'm going to concentrate on finding the killer. Whatever happened at the meeting isn't important anymore. Getting Meg out is. But what happened earlier was important. Someone who was at that meeting is probably the killer. Good luck trying to talk to people. Before I left, she gave me a copy of the list she'd made of the people she remembered being at the meeting. Last night, she'd already given a copy to the police. I returned to the high school complex to see who among the faculty was in the building. Georgette Constantine, the school secretary, met me at the office door. This is awful. About Meg, she began. You're going to do something about it, aren't you? I like Georgette. She lives to fuss and fume. For years, I bought her act as a major ditz. Always befuddled, but willing to bend over backward to help you. It took a while, but I realized very little got past her at any time. She knew what and who to watch out for. Over the years, we'd become good friends, especially after I helped her organize the custodians and secretaries into their union. I said, I'm going to do everything I can to prove she didn't kill anybody. Even if she's found not guilty, they won't keep her on, will they? I'd miss having her around. She's wonderful to work with. We've been friends for ages. I'm going to do everything I can to ensure her continued employment here. Carolyn Blackburn didn't sound like she was ready to fire anybody. Good. She glanced around and then leaned closer. I shouldn't be telling you this or showing you these. She held out some pink telephone message sheets. These are for Edwina. There have been calls coming in this morning about you. They're saying they don't want their child in your classroom. I rifled through them. There were 6. I didn't recognize any of the names. I haven't begun to memorize the names of the kids in my classes, but these don't sound familiar. I checked. Only one has a kid scheduled to be in one of your classes. Why would they call if they don't have students in your classes? Fear, ignorance, outright stupidity. I don't know. How many more of these came in over the summer? She thought a moment. Less than 25 here. I don't know about the district office. Carolyn didn't say anything about this. I talked to her secretary this morning. Parents are calling the district office as well. It is always good to be in with the secretaries. They can tell you real information and be more truly helpful than anyone else in the school. There's something else, Georgette said. There were 2 other calls beside these. These people were hateful. Before I could disconnect them, they became obscene and abusive. The second one started out more reasonable, but as soon as he started making threats, I hung up. Same person each time? No. Male or female voice? Male both times. Each sounded young. Not little kids, but at least teenagers. I'm certain they were not adults. If they were teens, their parents might have put them up to it. Are you in danger? I hope not. I'd been with Scott in rural Georgia earlier in the summer, helping him with his father. The anti-gay prejudice there ran deep. I'd hoped for a little better in the Chicago area, but I knew there were crazies everywhere. They didn't say anything specific? No, just threats, but I hung up before they could go very far. I'll be careful. The police are interviewing everyone down in the science office and the old section. The secretaries in each building have lists of people to call. We're helping the police find out who was at the meeting. Carolyn told the detectives we would cooperate any way we could. If you're careful, you'll be able to talk to any teachers right after they're done. I don't want to get the police irritated. Maybe I'll try that discreetly later on. I asked her about Bjorn Quigley. She frowned. He's only part-time, so I don't see him much. I don't like him. Why not? He's rude to me. I knew this was enough to consign him to Georgette's 7th circle of hell. She promised to get me his phone number and home address and any other information she could. I thanked her and left. I grabbed a stack of material from my mailbox. I glanced through it. Near the bottom was a flyer from Seth. It was a page dense with print. On the top was the slogan, Solidarity Forever. Kurt's and my names were in bold print in the text. I stood in the office and read it. Basically, what was written accused both of us of incompetence, and if he was elected, Seth would put an end to rule by the high school teachers. I was seething before I was halfway to the corridor. This hadn't been in my mailbox late yesterday. I guess this was a reaction to my refusal to back him. He must have written it quickly and placed copies in everyone's mailbox last night before he attended the PTA meeting. I didn't picture him doing it after he heard about the murder. What was the point? I saw Trevor Thompson walk in the front door of the building. I swallowed my anger for the moment and hurried after him. Today, Trevor wore tight white jeans, a blue t-shirt cut off at the midriff, and black running shoes. You've got to be fairly young and very slender to carry off white jeans and midriff shirts. Trevor was both. He looked decidedly sexy. I've got practice, he said before I could say anything. I don't have time to talk. You were at the meeting last night. Listen, I'm really busy. I can't talk to you. He rushed off as if a group of rabid homophobes were after him. His eagerness to talk to me had obviously been replaced by sheer terror. I wondered why and vowed to get an answer. Celia Sacinsa, the learning disabilities teacher, came down the corridor. She looked as if she'd been crying. I worked a lot with Celia preparing for the difficult kids I would have in my class each year. You okay? I asked her. Jerome Blenkinslop was a good friend. She held a tissue to her nose and sniffed. I can't believe he's dead, and I know Meg didn't kill him. Maybe you should be at home, I suggested. No, it's better that I come to work. I want to involve myself in something. I don't want to think about him being gone. She dabbed at her eyes. How is Meg? I'm not sure yet. I gave her a brief outline of my visit to the police station. She said, I don't know how anyone could think Meg did it. She's one of the nicest people around here. They've got the wrong person. I agree. How well did you know Jerome? Each year, as With you. We talked about kids in his classes. We worked closely together for years. She sniffed again. I can't think about him. I need to immerse myself in work. Do you have a few minutes? We've got to discuss these seniors that are going to be in your remedial reading class. We did a student analysis every year before school started. These kids would have needs starting the first day of school. But I was anxious to do everything I could to help Meg. I told Celia this as gently as I knew how. But she was persistent. I have the class list, she said. If not now, when? Celia was a good person, and if a few minutes of rational work would help her, I could spare it. As we walked to her room, I told her about parents asking for kids to be taken out of my classes. You're so good with these kids, it would be a shame for these children not to have you for a teacher. I guess some of their parents don't see it that way. It's their loss. Let's presume the best. You're going to teach and have kids in class. We spent 30 minutes examining the list of kids. When we finished, I asked, were you at the PTA meeting last night? No, I had no business with the PTA last night. I've got a million kids to get ready for. I have to have daily plans for all of them. They've got to be in order for when school starts. She dabbed a tissue on her eyes again. You know, I talked to Jerome as he was leaving school yesterday. Do you remember if he said anything significant? He said he had a lot of people to see and that he felt obligated to attend the meeting. I thought about going. Maybe if I'd gone, Jerome would still be alive. Do you know his wife? She's a good woman. They loved each other. Did you ever meet his kids? No. She started to sniffle again. I tried to say some comforting words. When I left, she was pulling out a stack of forms. I trudged down to my classroom. I wanted a few minutes to think and then begin my plan of attack. When I opened my classroom door, I stopped. Something was different. I walked further into the room. Papers from yesterday still littered the desks and tables. They seemed to be in the same order I had left them. It was remotely possible that the janitors had been in to sweep up. I checked the floor. Stray bits of packing material still clung to the tiles. Even with the marginally competent crew we had, they would have gotten these scraps with the most perfunctory cleaning. The custodians hadn't been in. I sat in the chair behind my desk and carefully looked at each item in my view. Then it struck me. Yesterday, all the textbooks resting flat on their sides on the shelves had had the open end facing toward the door. Now they all faced the window. What earthly purpose did it serve to change the books? I took several off each shelf and looked behind them. Nothing. I shrugged off the feeling of uneasiness before I left. I checked everything else carefully. The computer was intact and undisturbed. I was most concerned about my union files. I take notes at every meeting, and I have as union building representative. As grievance person, I'd kept a file on every complaint I'd received. The originals of all these were at home, but I kept copies of everything in school. I'd lost several years' worth of originals in my fire. None of the cabinets in this old section had locks that locked securely. My classroom doors, like the libraries, were easy enough to break into with any kind of hard edge. I systematically checked all the files. I thought several might have been tampered with. I don't memorize every piece of paper that goes into each folder, but I do have a system. I always save my notes from each time I talk to a teacher or administrator in chronological order, in several folders. These were slightly out of order. One of these was Beatrix's, another a first-year teacher who couldn't control her classes. I could swear in court that the problem wasn't simply that I had misfiled these. I wasn't sure what the new placement of the textbooks or the disturbed files meant, but I was determined to get to the bottom of both problems. I also needed to find out if they were connected to the missing plan book yesterday. A Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold: to offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides, and in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.